Hello, and thank you for coming to biashistory.com, coming back, and I would like to say that I'm enjoying doing the video blogging. It's a nice little break from the writing portion that I have been doing. Now, today I want to address a very serious topic, and before I go into it, I want to make one very key point so that there is no confusion and no misunderstanding. I would like to say that the loss of life in Syria is a very important matter, and human life is always more valuable and always more precious and ought to be considered to be protected above and beyond anything else. And so, as I make these statements, please understand that I am not attempting to diminish the reality of the suffering of people in Syria, and please know that I hope that the fighting stops for many reasons, including the fact that many innocent people, many innocent civilians, are being caught in the middle of a war between a government and terrorist organizations that are hijacking once again what might have been considered a civil war or a civil protest against the government. There are many issues, many political issues involved with this, and that is not the purpose of this blog. It is for history. But again, history is never more important and never more valuable than human life. And so again, I say that I feel sorry for the people in Syria. I feel sorry and sad over the loss of life, and I do hope that the fighting in Syria will come to an end, primarily and most importantly for the ending of the suffering of the children, the little children, and the women and children and even men who are losing their lives and having their lives destroyed by this violence. I would also like to say that it does sadden me that the so-called rebel fighters, who are really terrorists, have been using valuable historical sites for purposes of intentionally destroying them and drawing the fire of the Syrian government. We have learned today, and there is a link posted below this video towards a news story, which is also linked to a video on YouTube, and it documents the attempts of the rebels, or the terrorists, to destroy or bring harm to key World Heritage sites identified by UNESCO, United Nations. These are Crusader period castles, Chirac de Chevalier. There is also other key monuments, ancient mosques, 700-year-old mosques that the terrorists have intentionally gone into, fired onto towards government officials, and they have no choice but to shoot back and thus destroy these mosques. Also today in Aleppo, a fire was started in what is the most ancient, or one of the most ancient markets that has been continually in use. This Aleppo market was active and used for trade in the Crusader period, when the Crusaders came into Syria. So this is a market that has never really ceased its operation, even though it's gone through 2 world wars and many other civil conflicts, and yet now these terrorists have apparently set it on fire or baited the government into setting it on fire. Now this follows a very particular trend that we have seen not only during the Arab Spring, but in other areas under radical Muslim control. The radical Muslim, Al-Qaeda and Taliban organizations, and just terrorist groups really destroyed in the 1990s the ancient Buddha statues in Afghanistan. Now, I myself am not a Buddhist, and this is not a concern, nor was I really upset about it on a religious level or a world peace type of level. But these statues did have a significant historical value in showing the spread of of Indian culture and the Buddhist religion towards Afghanistan and towards ancient Persia, and it demonstrated a lot of things about anthropology. And these were statues that scholars had literally spent their entire lives researching these statues. They had built a career over these two monuments that were, in less than 10 minutes, dynamited and turned into piles of rubble. Further, during the war in Iraq, the Iraqi citizens and, again, terrorists raided and looted the Iraqi museum, destroying or damaging intentionally Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian artifacts, priceless artifacts, ones that we can never recover, ones that we can only now just look at in pieces. Objects that had stayed intact since 3000 BC, 2000 BC, 1500 BC, 530 BC, were in just a few short hours ruined by the Islamic fanatics who went into this Iraqi museum and pillaged it. Many of the items were dropped, some were recovered, and some were repaired. Some are beyond repair. And now all we have to use to study these materials are not the actual materials, but we have to now rely on photographs that have been reproduced very abundantly, but in ever-reducing quality. But we cannot go and hold them and physically touch them. And even since the Iraq War, the first one in 1991, the Gulf War, archaeological work in Iraq and the Iranian western portion has been completely shut down. And we know that surrounding many archaeological sites such as Ur and many of the other key archaeological sites in southern Iraq, in the Babylonian region especially, there has been looting and illegal digging, and these clay tablets, these cuneiform tablets or priceless artifacts are getting onto the black market and going to Europe and being held in personal collections. And this funds terrorism. They literally take the funding, the money from these black market sales and use them to buy weapons, to buy bombs, to buy guns and grenades. And so we've seen this trend occurring, and even just as recently as 2011, end of 2010, beginning of 2011, we saw the quote-unquote Arab Spring. But this spring brought a lot of destruction. Again, during the rioting in Tahrir Square, Islamics once again, people who had very little connection to the Egyptian culture, stormed the Egyptian Museum, the Cairo Museum, and looted, again, priceless artifacts going back millennia, literally millennia, going way back to the ancient pharaohs. Now, the pillaging and the looting was stopped faster and more quickly by Egyptian officials, and the fire in the museum was put out, so far less was destroyed. The Bush administration, when the Iraqi museum was attacked, literally just shrugged it off, and Donald Rumsfeld said, you know, freedom's a messy thing, and things will happen. It took a long time for us to discover truly what we had lost, truly what needed to be replaced, or truly could not be replaced. And the Bush administration took a very cavalier attitude towards the loss. The Egyptian government took less cavalier attitude, but we wonder, will Egypt ever be open to foreigners? Will we be able to continue on Egyptian research, ancient Near Eastern research? Many archaeologists are now being pushed out of the Middle Eastern research. Research is grinding to a halt because of this. Tel Brak in northern Syria and sites such as Shigar Bazaar were also open to archaeologists, but now they are closed because of the violence in Syria. Travel advisors are out saying don't go there. Pretty much nobody can get in anyways. And so studies of even the northern Mesopotamian periphery are becoming greatly reduced. And so now pretty much all of our research is going into Turkey. So basically what is happening is we have a twofold situation in which we have priceless artifacts being destroyed, being completely ruined, and a situation where we are losing history, and we cannot even get into the sites that we need to have access to in order to more fully generate a clear picture of world history. And this is a very serious matter, and I do believe that Iraq needs to take a lot more fundamental hard steps in order to get the situation back into where we can protect these items. But I also believe that in instances like this, that there ought to be more protection of historical sites to make sure that these sites are open to the future of education and the future generations that will travel to these sites. Maybe they will travel by shuttles. Maybe they will travel by means of transportation we can't even conceive of. But we ought to leave that for them so that they can. We ought not leave a legacy that says that this castle, Crusader Castle, was up and in existence from at least 1100 AD, but was destroyed in 2012 or 2013 AD. So we need to work much harder at protecting these valuable historical sites, which will help us gain a better appreciation of our lives and where we are going, where we have come from. And I would like to say, in rebuttal to Roger Matthews, who has in his excellent book, Ancient Near Eastern Archaeology of Near East, Mesopotamia, has suggested that archaeology should be placed more abundantly in the hands of the native countries and the people of those regions. And I would say, and I would postulate, that all attempts to have done that have shown that maybe we cannot trust that to occur, that type of level of protection and sacredness to be approached to these objects of antiquity. It does seem that the more radical Muslim governments do not have an appreciation for any of the history of that region pre-Islamic, and that they seem bent on destroying anything that does not have an Islamic justification. So I would urge many leaders and world thinkers to consider how best we can protect the antiquity's history of the world, and to protect that history, which will help us understand where we have been and where we are going. Thank you, and I hope to see you again here on BiasHistory.com.